It now gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, who is Tim M. from London, UK, speaking on the topic of First Things First, getting things in order. Come on in, Tim.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic. For those of you who are from other fellowships, there's more wrong with me than just that. So you're amongst friends here. My date of sobriety is the 24th of July, 1993. So I'm in my 29th year of sobriety now. My home group is the Breakfast Club, as we call ourselves, Group 12 in San Antonio in Texas. It's breakfast for them, but lunchtime for me. So we're all eating, but just different meals. I think it's fair to say that we're people who normally would not mix, but there we are, all in a room together. I feel very at home there. I have a sponsor, a chap called Joe McF in Galveston in Texas. And he has a sponsor, Bill D from, somewhere in Minnesota. I can never remember the name of the place. It's a tiny little place. And he has a sponsor with, 55 years or something, called Mike L from, I think, Indianapolis. I know where my information is coming from, and that can be really helpful. But there were some people in the 1990s who people now tell stories about. They used to run around Texas holding up their big books in meetings and referring to their big books as BS sifters. So the truth is, although I've got a sponsor and he's got a sponsor and he's got a sponsor, the program that I use to live, it's basically what's in the big book. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to figure it out. If in doubt, just do the black bits of the page. I don't know about anyone else. I can get myself tied up in mental and emotional knots. And when I do that, I do exactly what it says here. First things first, getting things in order. I think it's I didn't come up with the topic, so I can say this. I think it's a clever topic. Because getting things in order means a couple of different things. It can mean getting things straightened out, or it can mean doing things in the right order, doing the most important thing first, and then the next most important thing second, and so on. I didn't find AA straight away. I had a tiny little nervous breakdown, hardly worth mentioning, in 1990 as a direct result of my drinking. And I knew, it was a direct result of my drinking. There are people in meetings, and they're lovely people, but they say, I had no idea I had a problem. I knew I had a problem. Everyone around me knew I had a problem, right? I mean, I kind of had a problem before I ever drank, but then I drank and then we all had a problem, right? So in 1990, I think the phrase is the wheels came off. And the engine was still turning, but the wheels had come off. And I decided to stop drinking forever. And that lasted, I don't know, 2 to 3 months. Then I was drinking for another 9 months. And then I stopped drinking forever for 2 months. And I started drinking. And that was a year and a half. And then I really tried after that. Things got very serious. And the book talks about being baffled. I was baffled because whilst previously, in the moment of stopping, I'd thought I'm going to stop forever. But then my mind changed itself. This time, this is around January 1993. I knew I needed to stop forever, and it was serious this time. What I understood was that this was before AA. What I understood was that those moments of grace, when you suddenly realize at a gut level how much trouble you're in, even though the evidence had been there for a year and a half or longer, there's a moment of grace when a click in your mind happens and you think, oh, I really am in trouble now. And I was very deliberate over 2 long weeks, count them, very deliberate over 2 long weeks about not drinking. And I was very, very careful. And my mind was made up, in part because I won't tell the whole story, but my brother was an alcoholic. He died of alcoholism. Some facts emerged and there was nowhere left to hide. You know the game with the 3 cups and the pee, whichever cup you lift, the person's hidden the pee under one of the other ones. I don't know how they do it, and they cheat you. At this point, all the cups were lifted and I could see where the pee was. And it was my alcoholism. Anyway, I found myself drunk again and I was baffled. Again, I don't know how I came to AA. I mean, I know literally how. I was walking through the hall of the house I lived in. There was a telephone table. There was a stack of yellow pages. On the top of the yellow pages was a telephone. I looked through the yellow pages for alcohol. I found Alcoholics Anonymous. I called and someone answered. That's how. But I'd walked past that table every day for a very long time, and I'd never done that before. I'd never thought of seeking outside help before, but I did. Make of that what you will. People who are rash might conclude that God was involved, but not all the data are in. So let's just leave that as something that just happened. And I came to AA and I loved it. And I was one of those people, oh, these are my people. I'm home, fine. But did the drinking stop? Not really. It stopped for a few days, a few weeks. But I kept drinking again. And the funny thing was, I was trying harder with AA than most of the people around me in terms of mental effort, actual effort, number of meetings I was going to, number of calls I was placing. I was kind of the busiest person I knew in AA, but I was drinking and the other people were relaxed and weren't. This got my attention and this got me a little bit concerned. And I was found wandering along Notting Hill Gate in London, having been released from some surprisingly clean cells at Ladbroke Grove police station I'd been drunk and disorderly early that day. I'd silver-tongued my way out of formal arrest. I was just banged in the cells for a few hours until I was polite and contrite and reasonably sober. And this bloke, Brian, found me wandering. I think I had a little bit of sick down me. I wasn't looking my best. And he sat me in his car outside the meeting. And I was, you know, those tears. Oh, I was tearful that day. I don't know what went wrong. I was doing everything right. And I drank again. And Brian said to me, "You've been doing really well at everything except the not drinking part of the program." First things first, joining AA to me means stopping drinking. Now, some people need medical help. They need to go to the doctor. They might need a detox. They might need 3 months in Mena, Texas. Who knows what people will need to actually physically get off the stuff. My friend Tom says alcoholism is a lot like a gorilla. And you dance with the gorilla, but you're not done dancing until the gorilla is done dancing. When the gorilla lets go, run like hell out of the gorilla's cage. At that point, I could detox without medical help. Maybe I needed medical help, but I didn't know where to get it. I didn't ask. I just kind of suffered. So that was that little bit was up to me, but there is help. If you're struggling with the detox stuff, there are in most countries, there are agencies that can help you. But after that, there's a funny little thing. I had to make a decision before step 3. I had to make a decision that today, I was not going to drink no matter what. Now, this sounds like a funny old thing to say because we're told in step 1 that we're powerless over alcohol. So, and people sometimes, I mean, they kind of have a point when they say, well, if I could just not drink today, I wouldn't need a 12-step program. Sometimes truth involves holding 2 ideas in your mind at the same time. So maybe both parts of that are true. How can both parts be true? I'm responsible for staying sober today, but I'm powerless over alcohol. And I'll tell you how that works for me. There's a passage in the big book which doesn't get read very often. It's in the, so there's Bill's story, there's Dr. Bob's nightmare. Bill was generally the more dramatic of the 2, so I'm surprised it's not Bill's nightmare and Dr. Bob's story, but for whatever reason, it's Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare. And then there's Alcoholic Anonymous number 3. You know, he doesn't get the dramatic title. He's just the 3rd one. So they don't even put the name in the title. So that's how much they thought of him. Anyway, poor old Bill. The 2nd Bill D. He's worried about this idea. He's going to have to go the rest of his life without drinking. And they say, oh, yeah, you can never drink safely again. That's true. Fine. It's bad news. There we go. You can never drink safely again. But you don't need to suffer under the burden of the mental thought of never drinking again. All you have to do is stay sober today. They said, can you stay sober today? He said, sure, anyone can do that. Very interesting. So that's one point. There is this idea in AA that I've got to get to bed tonight without a drink, but I'm powerless. So how am I going to? Powerless doesn't mean helpless. On my own, I'm helpless. But with AA, I'm not helpless. Why? Because I've got people. I've got the big book. I've got the pamphlets. I've got the other books. I've got, as soon as you start to get into it, I don't know how new anyone is, but find a sponsor who will give you plenty to do, not plenty to think, plenty to do. And I found people that filled my day with activity. on top of my job and my ordinary everyday obligations. So I did not need to think. I just needed to obey the system. So I didn't need to worry about the higher power. The higher power came in step 2, step 3, and then later on. But I could turn my day over to the care of Alcoholics Anonymous, which meant following the directions of the people around me, taking actions I didn't believe in because the people who were suggesting them were doing way better than me. So I trusted them. I didn't need to worry about God. I trusted them. I trusted what they said. When they said, you're going to be, if you take these actions, you're going to be okay. I didn't second guess them. I didn't say, well, I'm not sure about that. And I'm not sure I believe what you're saying. And my case is different. I just said, okay, I'm going to be, you tell me I'm going to be okay. Fine, I'm going to be okay. Right? I allowed people with a lot more sense to override my perception of my situation and my judgment as to what to do with my day. So I did not need to rely on myself anymore, because if the point about powerlessness is that left to my own devices, a couple of things are going to happen. The first thing that's going to happen at some point, maybe today, maybe in 5 years' time, the thought's going to occur to me, a drink is a good idea, right? The second thing, if I follow that, in other words, if I am my highest authority and I'm in the habit of doing whatever my head has just told me to do, I will drink when that happens. And when I drink, a second thing happens, which is, I think the technical term is, I am off to the races. I'm done when I'm done. And I'm going to come back to that step 1 stuff because I think it's important, and it applies in other addictions and it applies in other patterns as well. But the basic point is, being an alcoholic means, an untreated alcoholic means, I am a danger to myself. My friend Jay, his father said to him, he said, a casual observer might conclude that you do not have your own best interests at heart. My behavior would not suggest I had my own best interests at heart. In fact, my behavior ran contrary to my own best interests. Yet everything I did, sober and drunk, before I got to AA seemed like a terrific idea at the time. So what I conclude from this is, step away from the car man. I needed to be nowhere near the steering wheel of my life, because I would crash it into a ditch in a second. So I had a surrender around July 1993. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do it. I don't have to like it. And I don't have to agree with it, either practically or philosophically. I just have to do it. I made the terrible mistake of, don't talk to old timers unless you want to be. If you don't like being outsmarted, don't talk to old timers. They have an answer for everything, and it's really annoying. I remember saying to someone on the subject of God, I said, well, I'm scientific in mindset. I don't know where I got the idea from that I was scientific in mindset. When I was 14, I was pretty good at chemistry, but that's about as far as it went. I was not a scientist, certainly. Anyway, I said, I've got a scientific mindset. And they said, have you? Well, that's very good news, because if you like science, you're gonna love this experiment. This experiment is to live, maybe for a year, like God is in charge of your life. asking God for direction and strength every day. And what you can do is you can come back to us in a year's time and report in on the results. That's what a scientist would do, without any prejudice, without any bias. Just take the hypothesis and test it out. I didn't have an answer for that, so I did it. Back to this point of staying sober today. What that means is there are going to be moments where my idea is to get drunk, or that drinking would be a good idea, or whatever. Or maybe there's some other neat stuff that can get you into trouble. If you haven't found out about that yet, well, you know, it's on its way. There's other stuff that alcoholics get up to occasionally. What I was trained to do, they say if your behind is on fire, pick it up and take it to a meeting and we'll put it out for you. If you have a good idea, call your sponsor. The fight was knocked out of me by my alcoholism. I didn't have it. By July, August to the 1993, I had no fight left in me. I was just ready to do what I was told. And what they said was there are going to be days when, unfortunately, because part of you really, really wants to drink, you're going to have to be prepared to suffer. Maybe for a few minutes, maybe for a few hours. It kind of doesn't matter what you do, anything but drink. Tom says, pick a song from My Fair Lady and learn how to sing it. And while you're doing that, you'll be not drinking. And at the end of it, the worst that can happen is you now know a song from My Fair Lady. You can entertain your friends at fellowship after the meeting. It won't be wasted. It doesn't matter what you do. Read the encyclopedia. Go for a run. But just don't drink today. You can do anything else in the world, but just don't drink today. With other problems, just don't answer back today. Just leave them alone for 24 hours. You can interfere with their lives tomorrow. Just for 24 hours, don't interfere with their lives today. It doesn't matter what the thing is. This principle applies. Find the one thing that you got to not do and do something else instead. And I learned a couple of things. The first thing I learned was that the pain, the suffering, eventually passes. And you're like, is that it? So I was literally drinking myself towards death for years to avoid that pain, which passed in a few minutes or a couple of hours. That was wow. How dumb am I? The second thing that I discovered was that other people can't always save you. They're good, they're smart, they're all sorts of things. But there are going to be moments where it's between you and the big lady in the sky. That's God, by the way. Doesn't have to be a lady. For some people, it helps. My higher power is somewhere between Nancy Reagan and Maya Angelou. Somewhere, just somewhere in there, right? Common sense and profound wisdom, a good combination. I figure my higher power has got common sense and profound wisdom. I'll leave you to figure out which of those two characters has which. My higher power has to be someone I can go to at any time of day, who has a sense of humor, who speaks in a voice I can listen to. Not distant, not a copy of my father, my mother, or my whatever teacher at school. It has to be a voice where when I there are people that I read. And Maya Angelou is one of them, where when I read her, I feel that I'm hearing my higher power cut through all of my intellectual garbage and speak truth. It's extraordinary. And there are lots of people where that is the case. But I have to be able to have direct access, not through anyone else. It has to be there 24 hours a day. Why? Because I don't know when the crazies are going to hit. You know, if they hit when you're in the meeting, well, that's just dandy, because you can say to the person next to you, I want to die a lot right now. And they say, just concentrate on the meeting and come for pizza. And you go, okay. But what if that happens at 4 o'clock in the morning? You can't, and also you kind of wear people out. I was a little bit vampiric. I would kind of suck dry their compassion and tenderness, and people started to get snippy with me after a while because I was a little bit difficult. So I needed something I could go to at any time of day. I don't ask my higher power for sobriety. This is controversial. So in some meetings, they say you must pray to God for sobriety every morning. And that's not a bad thing. So if your sponsors ask you to do that and you're doing it and it's working, knock yourself out and keep on doing it until your sponsor tells you don't have to anymore. Maureen told me to go to at least 2, preferably 3 meetings a week in 1993. Now, she's never phoned me up to tell me that she's never countermanded the order, so I consider that still to be in place. I go to a lot more than 2 or 3 a week, but anyway, what's the point? The point is sponsors, you see, my mind is going. If you stay sober long enough, your mind will go and you'll wonder where it went. Praying for a sober day, that's it. I don't pray for a sober day. When I'm feeling ropey, I know what the right thing to do is. What I pray is for strength to withstand the pain of doing the right thing. That's different. That always comes. I don't pray for relief, because sometimes the only relief would be in a bottle. So I pray for strength, and that's a different prayer. There are books with prayers about praying for strength. Go and find them. Or you can just make one up. You can say something like, God, give me strength. After one particularly tricky night where it was between me in the blue corner and my alcoholism in the red corner, and I went to my higher power, and I think for the first time in my life properly prayed. I was relieved of not the drinking thought, but the compulsion, the sense that I was compelled. It was reduced from being an overwhelming compulsion to being an irritating brat in the corner. And I woke up the next day and thought, I'm really glad I did not drink yesterday. And a chilling thought came over me. I need never drink again. And there is nowhere to hide from that truth. Because I knew at a gut level that whatever had gotten me through with miles to spare. It was not seconds and inches. This was a power so extraordinary that anything was possible. I'm going to say something contentious. I'll say it about myself and you can draw your own conclusions. So I slipped a number of times. We call it slipping. I don't think it's slipping. I think it's jumping. Slipping happens to you. Jumping is something you do. I slipped a number of times between January and July 1993. Now, in the moment that I drank, that was a little bit like slipping. If you're walking across a frozen lake and you fall and the ice cracks and you fall through, there's kind of, it's by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. And then you can say, well, I just slipped through the ice. It's not my fault. Buddy, why were you walking on ice? That's the question, right? So every single time I had one of my slippity-doo-dahs, slippity days, I'd walked out deliberately on ice and then found myself involuntarily falling through a crack in the ice. I had decided to take charge of my own life, my own recovery. I had submitted to the program, but I desubmitted. I took a step back. Now, as soon as that happened, the fact of the relapse was now established. The timing would be down to circumstance and all sorts of factors outside my control, but the fact of it was already established. If you sponsor a lot of people, you can spot when this is happening, by the way, and you can tell them what's the worst that could happen. You get to spot when it's happened, when people are still polite, but they're now reserving judgment. It's a very curious feeling. So my job is to be wide-eyed about recovery, wide-eyed about spiritual reading and literature, wide-eyed about the big book, just to treat it like it's true, live in accordance with it and see what happens. And what has happened? What has happened over the last however many years? I came into AA. There's a funny turn of phrase. The Americans may not understand this, but in Britain, when you say, oh, so-and-so, he's got mental health, what you mean is he's got mental health problems. So when I got sober, I had mental health, let me tell you. My whole family was mentally ill one way or another, with one or two exceptions in distant relatives. I was not functioning on any notable level. I was good at Russian, irregular verbs, and a couple of other things, but I could not work. I could not have ordinary conversations with people. Everything was all over the place. All of my relationships were shattered. I couldn't study. I couldn't handle anything. Today, it's taken a long time. I've got a little business, and it's doing okay, thank you. I teach my occupation to other people. I've taught many hundreds of people my occupation over the years. I have my own place to live in, very secure and comfortable. Married. I haven't had a mental health episode of any note for a very, very long time. My diet is good. My exercise is good. I can handle money. Some of the first things first, the things which do actually make a big difference. How has this happened? It's happened by putting AA first. That's first things first. Here's a curious paradox. They said to me when I was new, life is what you do in between meetings. Very clever little idea. It means that the organization of my life, my concept, my conception of how my life is structured is not my life. It's based in AA, and then everything else gets fitted in around it. Now, later on, once recovery happens, page 19 of the big book, a much more important demonstration of our principles lies in our homes, respective homes, occupations, and affairs. But my base remains in AA, and then I use the rest of my life as the domains in which I demonstrate the principles that I've learned in AA, so that I can become a worked example for the higher power to show other people what this program is capable of working in someone's life. I don't think we work the program. I think we are worked by the program. We are the clay. If we submit to the process, it changes us in a profound way. Some other points about first things first. I think it's really helpful to have a home group. What's a home group? It's not necessarily the toughest group or the one where they talk about the steps all the time. It's the one where you feel that you can go in a crisis and be a mess, and people aren't going to judge you. You're someone where you're allowed to be all over the place. I like groups where people are a little bit odd. I'm not so keen on super disciplined groups. I like groups where there are people who are doing better than me. There are people that aren't, and I'm kind of in the middle. There's stuff on either side. That keeps me in the mid. Being in the middle of the group means there are people on either side, one way or another. That's very important. What else is important? Have a sponsor. My sponsor is not my friend, is not my psychotherapist, is not my taxi driver, is not Google, is not my meetings listing, or 100 other things. They're there to, what's that acronym? Sober person offering newcomers, SOR, something on recovery. They're there to, someone will fill the gaps in there. Sober person offering, I don't know. There's a clever acronym for what a sponsor is, but so their job is to give me direction based on their own experience. And this is people called me out right from the beginning. They called me out when I was drinking, and certainly when I was growing up. People were so scared I was going to kill myself, they didn't. So they let me persist in all sorts of mental rubbish. Oh, here we go. Someone said, sponsor stands for sober. Can you hear me, everyone?
We can hear you now.
The psychiatrists I saw, the psychiatrists I saw did not call me out. The psychotherapists I saw did not call me out. They were kind, but they didn't call me out. Maureen was a housewife in South London. And I'd say things to her like, I can express myself adequately only through the means of poetry. And she said a very bad word. And then she said, you're a common or garden alcoholic. And this process of calling out has been my saving grace. If people hadn't, I'd be dead many times over. In my life, I have got lost down so many mental rabbit holes. Right, think I'm back. Can you hear me now?
We can. Tim, are you there? We can hear you. Apologies, everyone. Please stand by.
I have just had a message.
Right, can you? I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tim.
Okay, good. So, where I was people didn't call me out, but people in AA did. And this was a huge benefit to me in all sorts of ways. As I was saying, I think I probably lost this bit. I've got lost down so many mental rabbit holes in my life. I think and think and think and think, and I read things which are untrue by people who believe the same untrue things as me, and I get lost. And I've needed to be yanked back into reality so many times. And the common sense of practical people around me who say, come on, and shake me until I'm back in the room again. That, above anything, if someone says I've got a higher power, but I have no one that I trust to override what I think is my best judgment, I'll be like, good luck. If someone says I don't have a higher power, but I've got people around me who will call me out when I'm full of rubbish, I'd say, I think you're onto a safe, you're much safer with that. The 19th century preacher Spurgeon, a difficult writer, but some of his stuff I find very interesting. He talks about people who will only let the light in through a crack in their own roof, but board up all the doors and the windows. In other words, they won't communicate with the world, they'll only communicate directly with God. And the danger then is you end up, in South America drinking Kool-Aid and giving Kool-Aid to other people as well. Maybe if he'd called his sponsor a little more often. So the important thing for me, above everything, first things first, is to be candid with my own sponsor and with a little group of friends around me in recovery. I've got a group of people who I ring when I'm in trouble, and there are 7 of them. Sure, you shouldn't need that after 28 years in AA. Well, I do. So there we go. Hard luck. There are 7 people I talk to. The 7 ring rates, the people I ring. if you will. And here's the axiom. From an axiom is something which is just true. From the 12 and 12, if I'm disturbed, I'm wrong. You only have to be a little bit wrong to be wholly wrong. And that's been an interesting thing. I think I've understood a situation in my own life or a situation in the world. And it helps me that my other half is very, very smart and very well educated. He's smarter than me and better educated than me and more knowledgeable and wiser. And sometimes I whip myself up into the most terrible froth about this or that in the world. And I'm ready, when he gets home, I'm ready to let rip about the state of affairs in the world, which is enraging. And I'll start to say something, and he'll drop in one little fact of which I'm wholly unaware, and my whole structure collapses. Because I'm willing to be overridden. And in a lot of my life, what I've discovered, almost everything I believe in about the outside world, about what is going on in my home group or in the country or in the world, if I feel emotionally involved, I'm not seeing what's there, I'm seeing an outpicturing of my own inner conflicts, usually with the higher power, actually, or my parents, one or the other. I'm not seeing what's there. This is astrology, where I'm looking at the stars and I think I'm seeing star signs, even though the stars are not near each other at all. I see pictures and patterns in the world. The reason they seem real is not because I've reasoned, but because they remind me of some psychological truth which is unresolved, which I'm pretending is not there, but I can't get rid of it, so I see it outside. Deadly. And I will scavenge the world for what I think of as evidence to support my ideas. But I've already made my mind up, because my mind is made up internally before the situation arises. When the emotional flavor of situation after situation is the same, be suspicious about what you're seeing there, because that shouldn't be the case. If you listen to 5 different pieces of Beethoven, you'll have 5 completely different emotional experiences. 5 situations in the world, you feel the same thing, you're not reacting to the situation. In my case, I'm seeing an outward picture of an inner state. It looks as though it's happening out there, but it's all happening up here. And here's the thing, the more emotionally involved I am in these situations, the more desperately I need other people to sit me down and explain what's really going on. They say that AA works because we're not all mad on the same day. AA works because we're not all mad on the same day. It works because we're not all mad about the same things. So when I'm upset, I don't want to talk it through with someone who is as upset as I am about the thing, because that's going to be someone that has that is broken psychologically in the same way as me. So I find people who can look at the same situation, the same state of affairs, and are emotionally unaffected. They're completely calm, not troubled, not bothered. And I say, well, how do you see this? And it's been my experience in almost every case, it is the person who is untroubled, who is completely at peace, who is most likely to be seeing things as they are. There are exceptions, but that's broadly the case, providing they're of sound mind and they've got enough data to go on. And so that's, I think, what has kept me safe. It's recognizing, it's having the grace to know when I'm out of my depth with myself, when I've got myself into hot water. A couple of other practical things though. If in doubt, do the steps. If you really don't know what to do, pick a number between 1 and 164, look it up in the big book, read that page, do what it says. And one last thing, thanks for the message. One last thing. First things first. Step 11 is a step that allows for all sorts of fun and fancy activities. There are books you can read, there are courses you can go on. There's all sorts of different types of meditation. People go to other countries to do step 11. It can get really fancy. Sometimes it gets so fancy that people stop going to meetings. Then it gets interesting. So with step 11, I do some other stuff. It's true, I've read the books and I think lots of them are helpful, but I don't know about anyone else. When I get emotionally disturbed, I think I've found something wrong with me that is not addressed by anything I've ever encountered before in the world of recovery. So I need to sit on my own in a darkened room, thinking very deeply about my existential state. What I've been trained to do instead is to ask myself, am I doing for step 11 precisely what it says on pages 86 to 88 of the big book? Well, I'm not. I'm too upset to do it. Well, try doing that first. Maybe first thing in the morning, God, please direct my thinking. Please divorce my thinking from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. Then I can start to think about my day, not about my life, not about your life. Let it begin with me. Little Al-Anon slogan, wouldn't hurt occasionally in AA. Let it begin with me. My day, that's it. All I have to do is what God wants me to do today. That's it. If I do that day after day, the whole of my life will sort itself out. That's what I've done for many years. And so, God, please direct my thinking. Please divorce my thinking from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. God, what shall I do in the next 24 hours? I ask for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. I relax. I don't struggle. I take it easy. I ask God to know all through the day what my next step is to be, and to be given the strength to handle those things. Then I'm asking for freedom for self-will. Then I'm asking, you can ask for yourself if others would be helped. So I ask often if there's a troublesome character defect, I'll ask specifically, please remove this defect so that I can be more useful at work or less beastly to my sponsees or whatever it is. Then a set prayer of some description. I usually just say the Serenity prayer. And then what else does it have on page 87? It talks about being quick to see where religious people are right. Read a paragraph. You don't have to read a book. If you can't read a paragraph, read a line. If you can't read a line, read a clause. If you can't read a clause, read a word like love or patience. That's your reading for today. Good, done. There are times I can't handle more. Praying for patience, tolerance, kindness, and love is the 10th thing. 11th, is there any specific situation I need to go to God about? Ask God what AA, attitudes and actions, what attitude shall I adopt, what action shall I take? And then the final thing is, how can I be helpful to the person who still suffers today? inside AA or outside AA. I think it's pretty much 8:30, so I'm going to stop now. And Mark, I'm going to switch internet connections to get back to a faster connection. So I might disappear for a few seconds now. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to let you take over from now.